Well, obviously things are getting interesting because of the Ravens' history, especially with Lamar Jackson. We know when Lamar Jackson is healthy, the Ravens make the playoffs. That's just the way it's been since 2018. Lamar is healthy, Ravens make the playoffs. And so everybody's just been waiting. When everybody on the outside, assuming the Ravens were going to get things together at some point. When are they going to get it together? So now they've got these 2 wins in 5 games. And if the Steelers lose to the Colts, who are number 1 in the AFC on Sunday, then the Ravens are legit just 1 game out from the top of the AFC North. So now everybody's talking. What is the Ravens' potential? Okay. So First Take went all the way in their debate. It wasn't like, could they make the playoffs? Could they make a wild card game? Could they win the division? It wasn't that. They skipped through all of that. And they discussed, with Lamar Jackson back, are the Ravens Super Bowl threats? They're going all the way. Now, I got to be honest, I felt like both Ryan Clark and Stephen A. Smith made some compelling points for each argument. So, Bobby, I'm going to get your reaction and mine, of course. That's what we do on here. At the end of this debate, Ryan Clark says, not a chance. Stephen A. Smith says, now hold on. Bobby, we're talking Super Bowl, not play. We got another question coming in a minute. So specifically to Super Bowl. Are they a threat? He's asking if they're a threat. That's the question on the screen. Are the Ravens a threat with Lamar? RC says no, because Lamar was already playing at an MVP level and they only had 1 win before he was injured. Stephen A. Smith says, I hear you, but can you definitively rule them out based on the competition that we're seeing in the AFC and the fact that the 2 big worries or the 2 big problems early was fumbles and a terrible defense that appears to be turning it around since the Elohi Gilman defense. What say you? Are the Ravens a threat for the Super Bowl once again?
I don't think either one. I think each one of them have a point, to be
That's
honest with
what
you.
I thought.
I think each one of them have. It's funny because you and I barely even talked about this. So apparently we're lockstep on it. Oftentimes we only pre-produce a little bit, right? And so in this case, we haven't really talked about it much at all. I think both of them have a point, and here's why. Right now, I don't believe they're a Super Bowl contender. But Stephen A. has a point as well, because they're not mathematically out of the playoffs. And as long as they qualify for the playoffs, which they still have a chance of doing, they're going to have a chance to be a threat. Have they gotten to the bowl yet? No. But they've been a threat in the postseason. They'll continue to be as long as they qualify. And as long as they're eligible to qualify, you can't rule them out, particularly given the favorable schedule moving forward. But as far as Ryan's concerned, in the here and now, yeah, I can't get lost in the sauce of a 2-game win streak against these 2 opponents in Chicago and in Miami and refer to them as a Super Bowl contender, not as of this juncture.
Right. You like Stephen A. He's like, you can't rule them out. I'm just so happy, if you don't mind me mentioning, that we have gone from they are cooked to you can't rule them out. We brought you along at least that far. You can't rule them out. Whereas before you thought they were cooked.
Correct. And as of right now, I have to stand by that. I've said
they're cooked.
I've said in recent weeks that I believe they're going to make it interesting.
Yeah.
Here they are making it interesting. And they're heading in the direction where I'll have to eat those words, but we're not there yet.
Okay. I can respect that.
Yeah, we're heading in that direction.
You see a future where you may have to eat the words.
I see both. I see both scenarios that are in play. Both scenarios are in play. Just the way that they can be a threat in the Super Bowl is in play just as much as this thing going south. But right now, it's certainly they're up. Who said it earlier? We up. Let them know we up. Cameron Walker. They feel, they're up right now. There's no doubt about that. But I can't get lost in what I feel like is an inflated 2-game win streak. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair. But even before the 2-game win streak, I still felt comfortable saying they weren't cooked and they were going to make the playoffs. So
you did.
You're waiting for evidence. I'm projecting. It's 2 completely different styles. You want to see it to believe it.
Yep.
My view is anybody can do that, though. Yeah. I feel like it takes it's projecting is a little bit more difficult. Anybody can say, okay, I see it once you see it, once they do it.
look,
but it's another thing to like look ahead.
Yeah.
And that's why people have to eat their words, though. You did look ahead and you said they would be cooked, and maybe you will have to eat those words, maybe you won't. But at that point, before that Bears game, you were off the playoff bandwagon. I was on it. So I guess my point is I'm not lost in the two games. I thought this was coming, and I think they're going to continue to go on a run.
Yeah, and I'm just referring to myself, in terms of the way I'm looking at this. I don't want to get lost in the sauce of a 2-game win streak against inferior opponents where there was self-inflicted wound after self-inflicted wound. But I also realize that there is a very real scenario where I'll have to get on here and say, I jumped the gun. I jumped the gun on pulling the plug on Harbaugh. I jumped the gun on calling him cooked, but we're just not there yet.
I got you. Well,
and what's interesting about this, though, and why it's going to have so many layers moving forward is they still might not get to where they want to go, like we've talked about in the postseason. And the bites of the apple that Harbaugh has had that you've been talking about may still come up regardless of whether or not they make the playoffs. We'll save those conversations for down the line, but that could be a very real scenario.
Yes, and I'll actually have a clip on that would sway me one way or the other. I'm with Stephen A. that you cannot rule out the Ravens as a Super Bowl threat, but I'm not sticking my chest out the way I would if somebody asked me, do you think the Ravens will win the AFC North? Okay. I'm going to go stronger than saying I won't rule the Ravens out from the AFC North. I'm going to go stronger than that, and I'm going to predict that the Ravens do win the AFC North. Chris Canty was asked that very question this morning. Why don't you hear what he has to say? You let me know where you're at.
Well, make a run and win a division.
I don't know. And here's why I don't know. The defense is still not buttoned up. And I get it. They only allowed 6 points last night, but I thought that had way more to do with the self-inflicted wounds from the Miami Dolphins than anything that Baltimore did defensively. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my question is, can that defense beat teams that don't beat themselves? And does the answer to that question actually matter, considering that the Baltimore Ravens play in what feels like the worst division in football? Record-wise, it is. Now, 5 of the Ravens' final 8 games are against AFC North opponents, so they got a chance to feast on a lot of bad. But when the Ravens are matched up against a team that doesn't make the mistakes that we saw from the Miami Dolphins throughout the entirety of last night's game, can they be good enough to keep their team on the right side of those outcomes?
Now, that looked like that resonated with you. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I just think that's fair. But you also hear a change in his tone a little bit from recent weeks, which is maybe bringing us back to what we were just talking about a couple minutes ago.
Yeah.
He's not sure. But at the same time, he's also noting what we've noted, how banged up the Bears secondary was, how many self-inflicted wounds, the game mismanagement at the end of the first half, the end of regulation last Sunday, and then turn around last night. We know Miami's woes. We know their issues. So I just think that's a fair way of looking at it. And now the Ravens get a chance to, who knows? It's Minnesota. It's the Jets. Who's in between Minnesota and the Jets for their schedule? I don't have the schedule in front of me, but it's one other team that is a favorable matchup for the Ravens.
Isn't it the Browns?
Thank you. Cleveland. So I just think that it's gradually heading in the right direction. If you solely look at the output, which is 20 points or less the last 3 games in which they're 2-1 defensively wise, it's a great step in the right direction. But there's still a ton of issues with the run defense. There's still a ton of issues with players that have speed on the outside like Achane. But like we talked about on the post-game show last night, they're not letting themselves get beat badly over the top.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of which is due to Alohi's patrolling on the back end. We'll talk about him in just a bit. Kyle's playing at an all-pro level and affecting the game in countless ways. And maybe they're days away from bringing in a guy or two defensively. So I recognize all that too.
Yeah, that's the thing is I think what Chris Canty said that is correct, that I think you, me, and Chris Canty all agree on, is that I love the defensive direction, but I'm not a believer to take me from the Ravens will win the AFC North to sticking my chest out about being a legitimate Super Bowl threat. Because then so I guess what I'm saying here is I am on the record, the Ravens will win the AFC North. And I don't think that's some just optimistic, Sarah's being optimistic kind of thing. The numbers prove that out. The evidence proves that out. We see it right here. Kalshi put out last night and this morning, the Ravens have doubled the chances of the Steelers of winning the AFC North. Like, it would actually be emotional to deny that because you're emotionally cynical. This doesn't put in optimism or cynicism. These are the numbers. These are the numbers based off of all the factors that they have, from Lamar Jackson to health to schedule to all of the other things that they do by the numbers. People talk about emotional always being like, oh, you're too emotionally into it for the Ravens, but you can be emotionally against the Ravens too because you don't want to get hurt or whatever. Like, this is the numbers today. The Ravens have double the chances, 59% to 29% for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the defense that we're seeing right now, with no additions from Eric DeCosta yet other than Alohi Gilman, the defense we're seeing right now is going to be enough, plenty enough in some cases, for the Ravens to beat the Vikings and the Browns and the Jets and the Bengals and maybe even the Steelers. I think that the Ravens can get by with this version of the defense to win the AFC North. That being said, for me to stick my chest out beyond winning the AFC North, I need the EDC to make some moves. That's where the difference is for me. Peter Schrager talked about trades both this morning, both for the Ravens and the Dolphins, since we just saw them, and what could potentially happen there. Do I have the right one? Is this it?
Well, while you cue that up, I understand
for something
your
to play.
rationale.
Nope, that's not it. Sorry, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, while you cue that up, I understand your rationale, and I understand the numbers. I know Femi's out there somewhere right now screaming it from the rooftops that Kalshi continues to go in an upward trajectory in favor of the Ravens. I just think it's a two-team race right now, and I think it's a flip of the coin based on how wonky the AFC North gets and how wonky the rematches are typically, or the series history, taking out, of course, the postseason game last year where the Ravens dominated the Steelers. I think there's a lot of parity that goes into these matchups, and I'm just not quite out in front ready to call it yet for the division as confidently as you are at this moment.
I got you. Here's Schrager on trade opportunities for the Ravens and Dolphins.
Trade deadline in the NFL, always look at the general manager and what their history is. And already we've seen Eric DeCosta, the GM of the Ravens, go out and get Alohi Gilman, which we have already seen pay dividends because Kyle Hamilton can now be the chess piece. In recent years, he has traded for Tre'Davious White at the deadline, Deontay Johnson at the deadline, Roquan Smith near the deadline, and Yannick Ngakoue a couple years back. I always look at the GM. Howie Roseman's going to be talking. Brandon Beane's going to be talking. Eric DeCosta is always someone you watch in situations like this when it comes to trade deadline. And to your point, 10 days now to really assess things, but really 4 days. The other side of it, Miami could be in fire sale mode right now. Bradley Chubb is a highly priced player that could be moved. You're looking at Jalen Phillips, who is a first-round pick, who people like. He might be on the move. And, of course, they've got Matthew Judon on that roster, who has been a piece that a lot of people have used in recent years. He could be on the move. So those three pass rushers, look for them to be possible trade pieces over the next few days.
Oof. So that's the key for me of how deep I think the Ravens can go in the playoffs, is who can Eric DeCosta get to help out in the trenches. No trades, still think they're going to win the AFC North. Without trades, that's going to diminish their impact postseason.